Hi, this is Ale Hinojosa from Choose Positive. Today I am very happy to welcome health coach and healthy gourmet advocate Heather Dane. Hi Heather, it is so good to have you here. Welcome to Choose Positive.
Hi, Allie. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. I'm going to start off reading your bio so that everyone watching is familiar with who you are and your work. So,
Great.
with a firm belief that there is no such thing as an incurable illness, Heather Dane spent years investigating the cause of her 16-year struggle with bulimia and many other health problems. Once a high-powered corporate executive, Heather made a radical career change and decided to choose health. She is now a writer, researcher, and a highly sought-after health coach. Her work combines her vast experience in business and natural health, and with a key focus on loving yourself, she encourages us to believe that we all matter and that what we eat matters. Heather is the official personal health coach to one of the founders of the self-help movement, world-renowned Louise Hay, with whom she is co-author of the book Loving Yourself to Great Health. Passionate about healthy gourmet, Heather also designs delicious recipes to nourish both body and soul because she believes we all deserve to enjoy every bite we eat. And so the intention for this interview is to give an introduction to how we can choose love for our health. And so I would like to divide this interview into three parts. First one is choose love, your story. Then we'll move on to choose health. Everything is food and thoughts. And then choose healthy sweets. So let's start with the first part. Choose self-love, your story. And I have here a quote from your new book, that says, "In the center of good health is one key principle: loving yourself. If you can start there, everything else is so simple." So Heather, we would love it if you could share with us and with everyone watching your story, starting from childhood with your health problems and how that evolved until you got a diagnosis and then what the prognosis was.
Absolutely. I became aware of the symptoms that I was having when I was about 10. There were sort of threads of symptoms before that, but when I was 10, I remember going to my mother and saying, everything feels stuck in my body. It kind of felt stuck from here down, and nothing seemed to be moving. And that was the first symptom I was experiencing. So my mother took me to the doctor, and the doctor didn't know what to do. The doctor said, here, take these fiber pills and go home. And this was about 1979. So it was a long time ago, and doctors really didn't know much about digestive health back then. So I got sent home, and over the years from 10 all the way through high school, I kept getting the newest fiber pill. That was about all they knew what to do. And during that time, I experienced a lot of cravings. I would sit down to have a box of cereal, and inevitably I'd finish the entire box. And I had all these cravings that made me feel uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable with my appetite being so big. And at the same time, I was hungry all the time. I felt really starving and full at the same time. So by the time I got to college and I was on the food plan, the cafeteria plan at school, I had less sort of choices about what I could eat. And it got worse. It started to feel like food was poison in my body. And again, doctors didn't know what to do. So I actually turned to bulimia, and I was very clear at the time that it wasn't about my weight. I was actually kind of underweight, but I just needed relief from what was going on in my body. And unfortunately, it did provide relief. And fortunately, it provided relief because it allowed me to sort of survive through the terrible symptoms that I was having. But I ended up also experiencing depression and other symptoms that sort of were related to having my body be in such an imbalanced state. Mm-hmm. And I did tell my parents about a year after I started having the most challenges. I really wanted to recover from bulimia. I didn't know what to do, so I told my parents. And at the time, it was 1988 when I told them. And at the time, all people knew about eating disorders was that it was really anorexia is what people knew about. And it was sort of an incurable disease of the mind, basically. And people were telling my parents that not only might I die, but I would probably struggle for the rest of my life. And it was so depressing to have my parents feel that scared for me that I decided I didn't ever want to tell anybody again. And I went back to college and I started researching. I enrolled in a nutrition minor in college. I started taking class. I was a business major, so this was a little odd for a business major, but I started taking classes in stress management and nutrition, and I ended up with a minor, and I sort of took my business classes around those and over the summer because it was my passion. I was really fascinated by, I knew there was something else going on. I knew it wasn't just in my mind. I knew that it was very physical, and I just didn't believe what people were saying to me about eating disorders. So I ended up, when I was my turning point for me was when I went to a specialist in Pennsylvania who had done a lot of work studying eating disorders, and he felt that it was the gallbladder, and that if you just would get your gallbladder removed, you would recover. And he explained that most people that he had operated on who had eating disorders and removed their gallbladder had a lot of stones and they were diseased. So he did this test on me, and lo and behold, I did have a diseased gallbladder, and he gave me a choice. He said, you will not recover unless you get it removed. So I went home and did more research, and I realized that most people with gallbladder removals ended up feeling sick about 2 years later. And so they didn't really have a resolution for a permanent period of time. So I remembered this book that I read that talked about how you could heal your gallbladder and heal the digestive system. So I pulled it off the shelf and I really started studying it. And that book was basically saying it's your diet. And if you just changed your diet, you would be able to recover your entire digestive system health, your brain health. It gave me an open door to think that maybe I could do this myself. And it resonated with me more than taking antidepressants or, going to a treatment center or having my gallbladder removed. So I started doing that. And I had tried diets before. So I was intrigued and I thought maybe it would work, but the diets hadn't really worked for me. So what I did that was different this time was I actually decided that I had to go inside myself. I had to go inside my body and I had to think, what do I need? I've tried vegetarian, vegan, raw, macrobiotic. I've tried them all. They didn't really work for long. They helped, but didn't really work for very long. So I decided to go in my body and say, body, what do you need? What is, I see that this person is laying out this diet, but it's not exactly how I feel is going to work for me. So I ended up crafting my own diet. I made a list of things that I felt like my body needed. And I sat down to make my first meal. And it was the first pain-free meal I had ever had. I mean, I finished the meal. I basically tuned in before I ate, said, okay, I'm preparing my body for this food. I smelled it. I did a little meditation. I got really present. I ate the food. I didn't multitask. I was present with the food while I was eating. I tasted everything. And then when I was finished, I sort of sat and let myself be still. Kind of like a little, okay, I'm very grateful for what I just had in my body. And there was no pain. For the first time. I mean, I had this sort of chronic pain, and the pain started immediately after a meal, and it was gone.
Wow.
And I was amazed. It was like a miracle. How could food do this? And I think then I knew that it was a combination of not just food, but it was me and how present I was with the food. And I wasn't off, on autopilot on my computer or sitting at a desk or in a car or something like that, but that I was present with the process and I was fully enjoying the experience of taking that nutrition into my body. And that's what sort of got me started on, I left my corporate job within a few years from that and started to think about what I needed. It's sort of like when we heal, you probably had this experience too, Allie. When you heal, you say, okay, that worked. So where else can I listen to myself? Where else can I listen to my heart and my body and follow that?
Right. And Heather, at the time, well, before you left your corporate job, you were embarking in this journey, natural health and all of that. How did you find the time to take care of yourself? Because I think that for people watching, that's going to be like one of the main questions. I want to take care of myself, but I simply don't have time to prepare the meals, to have, to cook, to get into the kitchen and all that.
That's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was working 12-hour days. I had a very responsible executive role. We had big things happening in the company at the time. I had also just been given another 20 people on my team, and a piece of work that I really didn't know very much about. So all of this stuff was happening at once. And what I was actually working with a business coach at the time, and I was working on reducing my need to be a workaholic. Sort of, why do I feel like I'm approaching work where I have to carry all this weight on my shoulders? And so I started this experiment. And the thing is, Allie, I think we all kind of do this. We put ourselves last.
Yeah.
We have all this, we believe we need to do this giant list of things, and we're at the end of that giant list. And most of us don't get our entire to-do list done anyway until we learn, better ways of balancing. But most of us have this giant to-do list that we think we're responsible for, and we're somewhere at the end if we even make the list at all. And that's where I was. And the thing is, the other piece to this is that we wait until we're really sick before we make the changes, right? And this is where I think the turnaround comes in. Why do we have to do that to ourselves? Why do we do that? I think it's our body loving us so much that our body is saying, you have got to pay attention because you have better and bigger things to do and you have a better life to lead. But many of us, we could be making small changes and loving changes along the way instead. And I hope that some of the people listening will start to do these small things. For me, I stopped working so hard. I learned how to say no. I had really not many boundaries. I thought I had to be perfect. I thought I had to hold up the company. I thought that I had to do everything for my friends and my family. And I started to sort of peel back the responsibilities and say no a little bit more. And that was really hard to do when I felt like I had to say yes to everyone or else they might not love and accept me.
Right.
I had to this is where the thoughts come in with the food, right? I had to change my attitude about what I thought I was responsible for and when I wanted to say yes and when I wanted to say no. And the first thing I started doing was I stopped working nights and I stopped working weekends. In this very conservative company where everybody was type A and sort of churn and burn type people, I started leaving at 5 o'clock to go do yoga. And even if the meetings were still going on, my boss knew I was leaving at 5 o'clock to go do yoga. And so I started doing that, and I stopped bringing work home on weekends. And what I found, because I was focused on working smart and I was feeding myself healthy food, my brain was working better. I was making better decisions. I was more creative and more tuned in to sort of what really needed to be done. And what I found was no one noticed that I wasn't working nights and weekends. People were saying things like, oh, you're working so hard.
Oh, wow.
And, oh, you're getting so much done. Or, oh, I'd do something that would take me half an hour in my state where I was with great nutrition and I was feeling good and my brain was working well, and it would take me half an hour, and somebody would say, oh, this must have taken you so long to do. And I thought, what have I been doing to myself? What have I been taking on thinking it was my responsibility? And that year, my team was the highest performing team in our division. We all got the biggest raises in the company. I got a raise and a promotion, and I was leaving at 5 to do yoga. And I was in the kitchen with more time to make meals for myself. So I thought, what a miracle that I actually can take time for myself and do really well at work too. That there's a different model than we thought the model had to be.
That's right, Heather. Thank you so much for sharing that. I had a bit of a similar experience, but it's so amazing. Like you say, it's such a miracle when we realize we really don't have to work as much. We just need to be smarted and to choose self-love and put that in the at the top, especially if we want to have good health, as you say. So that
Exactly.
takes us very nicely into choose health, the second part of the interview. Everything is food and thoughts. And for that, I have another quote from the book. I loved it so much, by the way. What a gentle, great book. But so it says, health starts with how you think and ends with how you feel. It's about taking good care of yourself with the thoughts you think and the food you eat. And so in that theme, I would like to start with the gut and brain connection. I know that you know a lot about that you speak about it frequently. So we would be very interested to know what do you have to say about that.
Great. Well, it's funny because the book is written in a very simple way, because one of the things that Louise Hay has brought to the world is to take very, very simple principles and make them understandable for everyone. But yet those principles are much more profound than they seem on the surface. And so here's how simple she is. We travel a lot together, and we would travel to the Hay House events, and people would come up to her and say, I can't seem to stick to affirmations. They're not working for me. I'm not sure why. I believe in them, but I don't know how to stay with it. And she said, what did you have for breakfast? And the looks on people's faces, they would be all confused. And then they'd tell her, and it was often something like a coffee and a donut or something like that, some sweet. And she would explain to them about nutrition, and she's believed in nutrition for decades. And people have mostly wanted to hear about affirmations from her, but yet she's this brilliant woman when it comes to listening to her body and making sure that she feeds herself food to help her brain work better and to help the affirmations feel stronger and more powerful in her life. Now science has come along in the last, say, 5, maybe a little more than 5 years. Science has come along to say she's right.
Again,
and we've written the book in a very simple way, and it may even seem too simple, but yet there's a principle called Occam's razor, where the simplest solution, when you don't know the answer, the simplest solution is often the best one. And it's often the best place to start. And that's kind of the premise of our book, is the simplest solution: eat whole foods, get enough sleep, exercise, do nice things for yourself, think more positive thoughts, create a lifestyle you love. Nobody can argue with these things. No one can argue, but we think, because we think it has to be hard. And we think that it has to be the most technical, challenging solution. And if it's not challenging, it must not work.
Right.
And I must eat food that tastes bad or that doesn't make me feel good in order to get healthy. And none of that's true. I actually kicked notches when I started eating the way I love to eat and eating things that felt really good to me, because we're meant to enjoy life. And that's the whole idea about thoughts. We're meant to come from a place of love and enjoyment. And health comes from there. Health starts there. And when your body gets the message that it's safe, the cells are listening, and we know that from Bruce Lipton. So one piece of science is epigenetics, right? It's the that our perception has a lot to do with our health, and that our cells are really always listening and responding to what our beliefs and our thoughts. From a scientific perspective, newer research, it's been around a little bit longer, but their gut is, there's a gut-brain connection. And there are 2 ways that this gut-brain connection happens. One is that there's an enteric nervous system. It's like a whole nervous system in the gut from end to end. And that nervous system has the same number of tissues and brain chemicals as your brain. Mm-hmm. It's actually when you're an embryo, in the embryo stage, when a baby is just being conceived, there's one clump of tissue, and that clump of tissue separates into the brain and the nervous system. That's the first thing that happens, the brain and the sort of the gut nervous system. And so they're connected by something called the vagus nerve. And that's the 24/7 connection. They're talking to each other all day. If I'm having thoughts that I'm not good enough and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this, that's sending signals down to my gut. And usually that's when people get nervous. Exactly. Diarrhea and things like that. Or indigestion, people get nervous. If I'm stressed up here, all of the blood is going to my extremities, and the digestive system is shutting down. It will shut down to preserve energy for you to run away from the tiger that is being perceived. So the digestive system stops working. And about 80 to 90% of serotonin, which is the happiness hormone, is found in the gut. So if we're not eating food that gives us a chemical called L-tryptophan, an amino acid, tryptophan, we can't get that happiness up into our brain, because we eat the food, it extracts the tryptophan, and it goes up into the brain and says, I'm happy, I have self-esteem, I can sleep, I can make better decisions. All of that's from serotonin. And that is produced in the gut and then moves up into the brain.
Wow.
And how we eat determines whether it even gets up into the brain. So for me, when I had bulimia, I was not getting serotonin up into my brain. My body was not digesting. I was not getting the hormones I needed to feel happy and balanced. Therefore, the depression was one of the symptoms. And, psychologists like to say, oh, it's all up here. Well, now neuroscience is going to the gut. They're all starting in the gut and saying what's going on in the gut, because we know that those brain chemicals come from the food that you're eating. And if you're not digesting and assimilating those foods, you can't get what you need to have a balanced moods, balanced life, better decisions, better relationships. All of that comes from getting what you need from your food.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the other piece is our bacteria. So we have more bacteria than almost anything in the body. And there's this whole team. They're kind of like a health team. And the bacteria is good bacteria and bad bacteria. We need both. So this isn't, we hear about killing all the bad bacteria. It's more about balance than it is about killing the bad. And, we want to create balance between the good and the bad bacteria. And so what we eat creates that balance. And if we're eating processed foods and things that damage the digestive system, all of a sudden the community, our health team, is now getting more on the side of the bad guys. And those bad guys are sending signals to the brain, because we found out that they speak to the brain too. So not only do these neurochemicals come up into the brain from the gut, but we've got bacteria all having a party in our gut, and they're all saying whether they are happy or whether they're upset. And if we're eating food that makes them upset, we then feel upset. We feel anxiety. We feel depressed. We feel nervous, things like that. If they're happy, we feel balanced, and they're sending happy signals up into the brain. They have actually found that our bacteria helps to turn on and turn off our genetics. Wow. So if you have genetics that are like, you have something that runs in your family, you are not bound and determined to get that illness. You do not have to get it. And you can also turn the switch off. But what turns the switch on is our lifestyle, out of balance lifestyle, the food that we're eating, if it's not really appropriate for the body, the thoughts that we're thinking. All of these things can turn a switch on and give us those symptoms. But what turns the switch off is when we start to heal the gut and heal the way we live our lives. That can turn the switch off, and we can recover from autoimmune issues that people are telling us will never go away.
Right. And a lot of the health issues that are most prominent right now are, I would love it if you could talk a little bit about this, Heather, are related to the quality of our food supply and how the manufactured food industry has influenced, our health, really.
Yes, and actually in the 1800s, during the Industrial Revolution, food manufacturers had this real problem, because all the people were going from their farms where they grew their own food into the cities where they suddenly were giant groups of people in cities with not enough food to feed them. Yeah. And so they started doing these things where they were sweeping store floors and taking all that dust and dirt and putting it into food, like putting it into cocoa to stretch the cocoa. They were taking ash and putting it into tea. They were grinding up a lot of non-food items to stretch the food supply. And people were up in arms about it. The people that knew about it complained, but they didn't know what else to do. They had no idea what else to do. And it got ignored. Because the bigger problem was we've got all these machines and all these people, and, we don't know how to feed them. So in World War I in the UK, they actually had to turn away 41% of the soldiers because they were nutritionally deficient and not able to serve. 41. And they knew all the way back then that nutrition was affecting their ability to serve. And they didn't do anything about it, mostly because the bigger problem was, how do we feed people? So we've been experiencing, our entire world has been experiencing a situation where since the power is really in the hands of the food manufacturers, we know there's a problem, but in a way it's such a big one that it's been hard for everyone to figure out how to solve. And so it's sort of like it's become a grassroots effort. And I used to complain and be upset that there wasn't the food that I needed out there. And then I changed my mind and I thought, you know what? I'm going to be empowered, and it's going to ask me to get back into the kitchen. It's going to ask me, the situation we're in is going to ask me to empower myself to make food that works. And what I found, Allie, is that I started being drawn to the right food for me it's like we've lost our relationship to the land. And at one time we had this experience where our ancestors could taste things and know if it was right for their body. The taste buds were much more than just, does this taste good or not? It was more a connection to the body to say, is this going to ground and satisfy me? And so when I got in the kitchen, I was tasting things, and I was picking spices and ingredients that later on I would find out, wow, these things actually help I was stressed, and these things actually help some stress. Or it would be before before having a menstruation, when your body's inflamed, I would be naturally picking things that were anti-inflammatory without knowing that that's what I was doing. And I think when we get into the kitchen and we touch nature through touching food, it is like a garden in our home. And we are having a communication. We're reestablishing this communication with our body where we can start to understand it and listen to how that might affect us. And we start making food that tastes great and feels great to us. And so, the manufacturers, so when we eat our food, this is what's happening. We're getting this relationship, this intuition is coming. It may seem like, how could that ever happen? And I used to think that when I heard people say this too, that they could touch an apple and know if it was right for them. I thought, could I ever do that? And I could, with this experience, I was able to start doing that. And we all can. We all have this connection. And I think that we go out and we go to processed foods, and they've been scientifically manufactured to make us want to eat more. Now, if you believe in affirmations, think of a whole company with 100,000 people working together with the intention to make you want to eat more. Oh. And in there, all those affirmations are going into the food to make you want to eat more. When you eat that language is going into your body. Those chemicals that are kicking off, it goes into the gut and it kicks things off in the brain. Those chemicals are asking you to eat more. Those chemicals are changing your taste buds so that you no longer have a connection to what your body needs. And they're emphasizing sweet, fat, and salt. And there are only 3 tastes of the tastes that we need to be balanced. And so we run to the refrigerator looking for what's going to balance us. And we run to the shelf and we look for what's going to balance us. And it's this endless condition of feeling like a craving is coming on, because your body, not because you have something wrong with you, but because we're so imbalanced in the body that the body's intuitively looking for how to be balanced. Yeah. So when we take this technology, this non-food into our body, it's messing with a lot of the miracles that we've been created with in our human bodies. And it's sort of severing all of the things that allow us to think better, to feel better, and to make better choices, and, sort of listen to our intuitive information.
And even to have more willpower, or to have willpower as you have talked about. And there's a German study that you talk about that I find very interesting, and I would love it if you could share it with people watching.
Absolutely. Willpower is one of the most studied concepts in social science, because in all the studies that have been done, people rate willpower dead last on their list of qualities. They feel they don't have it. And a lot of people feel you have to be born with willpower, or you have to be a special person to have willpower. And it's not true, because the whole study found that what the key to willpower is stable blood sugar. That's it. The key to willpower is stable blood sugar. And so it's also at the root of addictions. If you think about an out of control behavior, what I'm usually working with my clients is, what's your blood sugar like? Let's go to your gut and see how you're assimilating food, because you can eat and still have bad blood sugar. You could eat a processed food and your blood sugar skyrockets and then crashes. Yeah. You could eat something very stabilizing, and if your gut is in a damaged state, it can't extract the food to get it into your system so that your blood sugar can be strong. So fixing that can fix so many things, because if you think about willpower, the study showed that we all spend half our day resisting temptation. Yeah. And willpower is the ability to resist temptation so you can achieve your goal. So half the day we're resisting temptation. And if you think of it like a muscle, we're like exercising this muscle all day to resist temptation. And at some point the muscle gets fatigued. And so we can be on a diet, and a lot of people will go on these low calorie diets, and they'll eat these tiny amounts of food, and they'll be so hungry that they go into their office and there's cake or donuts, and they can't stop themselves from eating it. And then they beat themselves up thinking there's something wrong with them, when really it's the body saying, I don't have willpower. My muscle is already working so hard to resist temptation. And now I have nothing left. It's like the muscle's completely depleted and you walk in and there are the donuts. And there was nothing left for you to even make a better decision.
Right. That's so interesting. And if we are aware of that, then we can start taking some positive steps toward, and then that takes us to the third part of the interview, which is choose healthy sweets, because we all got this, temptations especially on sweets, I would say. So I would love it if you could please tell us a little bit, Heather, about how we can reduce cravings. And then what are some substitutes for refined sugar that we could start to include in our diet?
Okay, great. So, when I started designing recipes, I was designing them. A lot of times I design them for my clients who have certain health issues and they can't eat certain foods and they want to have delicious food. And I was able to do that pretty easily because I've been doing it for myself for so long. There isn't what you want out there all the time. And so going home and into my kitchen and creating something was something I really enjoyed to do. And what I started to notice is that when I was recovering, I noticed that food did have a language in my body. If I ate something processed, there would be this feeling after I ate it of my body saying, more. You need more. This wasn't enough. This didn't satisfy me. And it was like the energy would go up to here. And I was up here with all of these sort of thoughts and energy about food. And it was all up here. And I wasn't grounded and I wasn't centered. When I would eat a whole food meal, I would feel the energy move into my gut, into my third chakra power center. And I would feel solid and grounded. And it was easier. My brain was clear to make decisions, and it was easier for me to do what I needed to do in my life and feel good about it. And I started to make food that way. I started to make food and really listen to my body. And when I would eat it, even from the first bite, I would feel how it was feeling. And was it nourishing me in the center of my body, or was it sort of sending my energy up? And why this is important for sweets is because natural sweets are really good. We need sweets because it's one of the 6 tastes in Ayurvedic medicine, or if you study Chinese medicine, it's one of the 5 tastes. And Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine are all about creating balance. And when you're in balance, everything is in harmony. And so the sweet taste actually does good things for our nervous system. It sort of opens us up and brings sort of that calm joy feeling, but it's really calming the nervous system. And probably a lot of people listening to this are energetically sensitive, because the more you're tuning into having a better life and really wanting to do things, you may become aware that you're really sensitive energetically. And if you feel you're that way, in Chinese medicine, we take that energy in through our nervous system in the back of the body. And it zings the nervous system. And so a lot of people who are energetically sensitive feel tired, or there are adrenal fatigue symptoms, or sometimes addictions, other related symptoms, because the nervous system is so out of balance. And in Chinese medicine, one of the ways to bring it back into balance is how we feed ourselves, because it's the front of the body, the digestive system, and the back of the body, the nervous system. And if we can balance that, how we take energy in from the outside and how we take energy in inside, we create balance. So if we sort of give up all sweets, or give up the sweet taste, or feel like it's not okay to have it, we're denying one aspect of balance in our lives. So with sweets, what I like to do is I like to take a protein fat, like a nut or a nut butter or avocado or something like that, even coconut flour and almond flour, which are alternative to grains that people are using to cook with. And I like to combine that with a healthy natural sweetener. And it could be dates. I use a lot of dates in my recipes, honey. Even molasses and like a grade B organic maple syrup are more natural. And, things like, some people move to things like stevia and xylitol, but I always say watch out for those, because they're in a sense, they can trick the body a little bit. Xylitol and erythritol can be wonderful sweeteners, but they can, even though they don't feed back bad bacteria, they're not digestible by the body. And so for people who have small intestine issues and are having mood-related gut issues, they go in and they take a long time. They sort of mess with the small intestine a little bit. So some people will end up having digestive symptoms like bloating and diarrhea and gas when they eat these things. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter how good anybody tells you it is. If it's not working for you, let it go. And I don't eat those because for a while I was working on my small intestine health, and I didn't want to mess with it and make it harder for my small intestine to heal. I found for me personally that dates work the best. But I found that because, like I said, when I ate it, I was really looking for that centered, that sort of centered third chakra, I'm grounded feeling. And also I was looking for no cravings, because if you eat something and you're craving more, something's not balanced about that recipe. So, and many times even the health food store things that have good ingredients don't have enough of the spices to balance it out. So what I'll tell my clients is, let's say there's a product called Cocoa Runes. It's just macaroons and they have pretty good ingredients. If they need to eat that because they're out, take a little cinnamon, sprinkle some on top of it, or do something that'll balance the taste out so that when you eat it, you don't feel like you have to eat the whole bag. So what I do in my recipes is I put spices and I make it so that the 6 tastes are balanced in the recipe. Yeah, and when you eat it, you get that you've got protein, fat, so you're already feeling grounded. Fat sends a signal of satisfaction to the brain. So if we're eating fat-free foods or a lot of grain, carby products, it's spiking the blood sugar up, and it's not sending that satisfaction to the brain. But if you're eating a protein fat with sweet, it could keep everything grounded in the body. And if you're adding things like cinnamon and cardamom, fennel, and things that aid your digestion, and they are designed to help your gut bacteria stay balanced, they balance out some of the things that happen in the body. Like if you eat chocolate and you're histamine sensitive, the cardamom can bring the histamine down. So it balances the recipe out a little bit. And so I like to design recipes to make to bring the body into a state of balance so that we can benefit from the ingredients that are in them, even though it's a dessert, and have blood sugar stay stable along the way. Mm-hmm. And so I guess what I should say is, if you're eating something, even if it's a recipe in our book, Loving Yourself to Great Health, and you feel like it's sort of sending your energy like this, try a different sweetener. Put honey instead of dates, and that might work better for you. Or use molasses instead and see how that works. Or take an apple and grind up the apple as the sweetener and see how that works. Because we're all really looking for what works for our bodies. And every body is an experiment of one. We're like snowflakes. Everybody's different. And if you honor your own, this is why I love when people get in the kitchen. If you can get in the kitchen and be a little creative to what works for your body, you can have an entirely different experience with food. And I will say that I don't feel like I have to work hard to keep my body fit and naturally slim and healthy. And I have a pretty good appetite. But I don't ever worry about food, because I know that what I'm eating is right for my body, and I listen to my body's hunger signals and I trust them, and I know that everything's going to be okay. And it makes a huge difference.
I'm sure it does, because that's how I imagine. Well, that's how the body was created. That's the design that it runs with. That's how it works. So, but Heather, for people who are wondering, what for some quick snacks or quick sweet treats, what would they can do? What can they have?
You mean if they want to make something themselves?
Yeah, like if they're craving something sweet or something, or just a little bit hungry in the middle of the afternoon or the mid-morning, and they just want to grab something quick, but that nourishes them and that satisfies that hunger and craving. What would be a good idea? 1 or 2 good ideas?
It might be nice. I like to have some nut or seed butter. Like a pumpkin seed butter is wonderful because it has zinc and magnesium in it, and those actually help the body stay calm and grounded, with some sea salt on it. Not iodized table salt, but either pink Himalayan salt or sea salt, because the body needs minerals. And for people who are energetically sensitive, having sea salt in your food helps bring that feeling of grounding back to your body, and it gives your nervous system the minerals that it needs. It feeds the adrenals. So I like to have a scoop of almond butter with some sea salt on it. And for me, that it's a little sweet, and it's got the sea salt on it, so it feels balanced, and it's quick food. It's really fast. Yeah. I also like in the afternoon for me, so if you're listening to your body, you'll know your rhythm. But for me in the afternoon around 3, 4 o'clock, I want something sweet and grounding. So that's where I'll reach for, say, the chocolate fudge recipe in our book. I usually have some of that made and frozen in the refrigerator, in the freezer, so I can get it out when I need it. But it really only takes 5 minutes to make. So if you're in a pinch and you really want something, you could throw the 5 or 6 ingredients into your food processor or on your stove on really low heat, and you can mix it right up and you'll have it. And I like to roll it up in balls with coconut, shredded coconut around it. And I like to take them with me wherever I go. And I actually will take them for dessert if I'm going out to dinner with people. And they're like, what do you have? Because they know I have something in my purse, and open it up and we all have a healthy dessert. So I do like to have something like that. The sweet and protein at 3 or 4 o'clock seems to just give me that extra little kick that I need to keep my blood sugar stable before dinner. So I would say really listen to your body. Eggs are wonderful. I like to cook my eggs, but if you're on the road, you could take hard-boiled eggs, sprinkle a little sea salt. You've got that yolk it's a nice protein fat. That's really wonderful and easy. And then you can always do like cut up vegetables, carrots, celery, something like that, and dip it in say pumpkin seed butter and with a little sea salt. And those are nice on the run type snacks. In our book, we also have some grain-free bread recipes, and we have some bread recipes that are with grains, that are with buckwheat and quinoa. Slice that up. Take it with you. They're high protein. They're easy to carry around. You don't have to have a fork to eat it. And they're really a wonderful snack if you're on the go, whether you're at work or traveling or something like that.
Those are great ideas, Heather. And also people can visit your website, heather.com, and there they can find more recipes and more ideas for, not only for snacks and sweet treats, but also for other types of dishes, lunch, dinner, whatever, no?
Yeah, so if people go to heatherdane.com, you'll also see we did the chocolate, Louise Hay and Alia Cadro and I did the chocolate fudge recipe in a video. And Hay House captured the video, so it will take people through the whole experience of how to make it so that you can see it step by step and how easy it really is. And then there's other recipes like pumpkin pie for the holidays and things like that. So.
Yeah, I saw that one. It looks delicious. I'm going to be doing that one for sure. Heather, I'm sure that people watching have found this interview very interesting and also very encouraging, and that's what I love about you, is that you give the facts, you talk about it, you explain it very well, but you also kind of encourage us and gives us ideas to implement all of these things and to take it maybe step by step, but just start moving forward with our health. So I want to thank you for your work and for sharing all of this today with us.
Thank you so much, Ali. It's been my pleasure.
Me encantaría saber cuál ha sido tu experiencia o qué preguntas tienes. Por favor, déjanos un comentario aquí abajo. Y si te gustó este video, por favor compártelo con tus familiares y amigos. La buena vibra es contagiosa. Muchas gracias por ser parte de Choose Positive. Soy Ale Hinojosa y nos vemos pronto.